King. 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 King.
Great Tuesday. Welcome to the Key Connections podcast, where we connect with intent. And I'm your host, King, and I'm joined today by someone who I'm very excited to have a discussion with. A gentleman I met a couple of weeks back, and he was someone who definitely stays in your mind, leaves an impression, not only when you meet him, but a lasting impression because of his essence and his spirit. So I'm grateful that he's decided to join the show today. And we're going to really get into his background, which I believe you will enjoy, and a lot of learning we're going to do as far as his life and his experience. So I want to welcome to the King Connections podcast, Nathaniel Alston, also known as Nate. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Great for you to be here. I should say. And so one of the key questions I'd like to begin before we get started is, I want to ask you, what's your spiritual energy number between 0 being life sucks to 10 being life is awesome, kind of in the moment where we are?
I would say kind of in the moment where we are right now, to probably be around a 6.5, leaning toward a 7.
Okay.
And I say because just recently, I shared with a group, when you played your theme song, I had also 3 theme songs that I used to have. And you'll love this because I shared with the team that I met with several days ago and another team that I met yesterday. I was reading a podcast from one of my clients who is a good client, and I'm his executive coach. And when I read the podcast that he did and really saw it, I flashed back to my theme song in the beginning. And I hadn't played it, King, probably in at least 7 or 8 years. And I lost track of it. Yes, the spiritual energy, but if you're asking the question, I realized that I hadn't played it because just things had happened over the time and I lost track. I resurrected that song. And it's a song by Lavisa Free, and it's called Something Inside So Strong. And when I played it again to myself, I was going to bed that night and I resurrected it, played it. It really captured, and shall I say, not captured, but reignited and recommitted my spiritual journey. Because when I listened to the song again, and I would play that, Something Inside So Strong, and then the second theme song on that series of 3 was McFadden and Whitehead. Ain't No Stopping Us Now, We're on the Move.
Yes.
And then the third one was a spiritual by Mahalia Jackson, How Great Thou Art. And so when I played it back in that order, Something Inside So Strong, Ain't No Stopping Us Now, and How Great Thou Art, I got re-energized, recommitted. The spiritual, probably if you would have asked me that when we first met, I would say maybe a 4 or 5, but now it's on an upward climb. So I'm saying about a 6.5 to a 7. And every time I listen to that again, starting it all, I get re-energized and the spirit starts a fire in me again.
Okay.
So I share with you that in terms of the question of where I am right now, I would say probably a 6.5 and probably leaning very strong to a 7. Because that song, when I listen to it, and it's about 5 minutes and 8 seconds, and it says, the higher you build your barriers, the taller I will become. The farther you move it away, the faster I will run. When I listen to that again, that's probably the thread that has run through my career throughout. So again, long answer to a short question. I'm at about a 6.5 to a 7.
Well, that's great to hear that you're moving up as a Jefferson say, moving on up.
Yeah,
And I appreciate
yeah.
you sharing the story as well, because I'm thinking about the songs you said. I'm familiar with two of them for sure. Mahalia Jackson was my mother's favorite gospel singer, so she's a part of my being raised and growing up and waking up on Sunday mornings and hearing Mahalia Jackson before every church service. So
Mm-hmm.
very familiar with her. And of course, Fat and Whitehead Ain't No Stopping Us Now is, remember hearing that as a kid growing up. So that's definitely a
Mm-hmm.
step.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not familiar with the other artists. Is that a gospel song that you mentioned first, or?
No, it's a South African song.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and one of the days I'll play it for you so you really understand what I'm talking about. It's basically La Visa Free, and it's something inside so strong.
Okay.
And
I'll
I'll
be,
play it for you when you get a chance, or you can go on YouTube and pull it up. But once you listen to the words, you'll understand what I was saying.
okay, excellent, excellent. Well, as we get things started, Nate, one other thing I want to do is ask you this. I believe that one of the ways to really kind of set the tone and set the state of the energy level, and I'm a big person that's based everything on energy. Einstein was quoted as saying, energy is everything and everything is energy. And so, with that being said, I believe one of the best ways to get people vibrating at the same level or higher level of energy is by asking the question, tell me something good. So before we get started, tell me something good that you want to share with our audience that's just really in your spirit to share, that's happened in your life or somebody else's story. Love to hear that.
Well, I would share now in terms of where, and it'll involve and include another person, and that's my bride, my wife. I always say, and I think I shared with you, I came from a broken home. Mother and father were divorced when I was 3. But the main accomplishment, I would say, in sharing something very good, and when I put it in my book, it's my marriage to my bride. And I say that now, if we're able to see August 15th of this year, it'll be 55 years.
Wow. Wow.
That is something good to me. Very good.
Something
55
great.
years. And we met, and to say whatever else that has occurred in my life, the main accomplishment that I would say that I would be, just overjoyed to say that I've basically been married to the same woman for 55 years, August 15th. And I quote a phrase that I heard. It's not the family that you're born with. It's the family that you create. And I'm indeed blessed, both spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, you name it, to be having the opportunity and the joy of being married to a woman that I love for 55 years come August 15th. So that's something good to me.
Well, I think that's a wonderful story, sir. Thank you for sharing that. That's definitely tell me something good. That definitely set a high bar when I ask folks that question going forward. Because I don't know anybody that I've met that's been married for 55 years. So that's an impressive commitment. And I definitely want to.
Yes, it is. And the fact of the matter is that she has been along with me on my side for all the years, the careers that I've had or the jobs and whatever. That's the most consistent thread in my life. Absolutely.
Well, sir, again, I definitely applaud you for that. Definitely want to dig deeper as we go into our discussion today about how you're able to sustain that, how you and her both were able to sustain that, especially in today's times with all these challenges we have to deal with, noise. But one of the things I want to do to give my listening audience an opportunity to understand who you are better, as I read a little bit of your bio so they can understand why you're on the show and why they should be listening to you. So we'll start by saying you go by Nathaniel Alston. I call you the architect of human capital and liberation. You're a titan of human capital strategy with over 40 years of executive level experience navigating the complexities of large scale human systems. As the president and founder of the Horizons Group and a former vice president of HR for Maryland's largest credit union, Nate has managed functions for organizations with over 8,000 employees across 16 states. His career serves as a definitive case study in what I like to call a Tier 2 individual navigator consciousness, demonstrating how to achieve extraordinary success in individual sovereignty by mastering the human capital space beyond the limitations of assigned categories. Lifetime Member Emeritus and former national president of the National Association of African Americans and Human Resources, Nat has spent decades as the forefront of collective advocacy, representing over 7,000 professionals. Today, he is distilling that vast experience into the fully human movement, guiding leaders from collective defense into like they call Tier 3 fully human emergence by integrating his deep wisdom and leadership development with the principles of paradigm dissolution. Nat has helped individuals who claim their creative life force and build economic sovereignty, proving that true liberation begins when we move beyond the construct into our full human frequency. So again, welcome to the King Connections podcast, Nat.
Thank you again.
Now, I like to frame my questions now and what my background is system engineering for folks who know me. And as a result of being a system engineer, I think in frameworks. I learn in frameworks. So I always put things in frameworks for me to understand and create measurable ways for me to measure activities and thoughts so I can either improve, scale, change, and just give things a numerical value. That's very important to me. And so in doing so, I came up with a concept around energy. Einstein was quoted as saying, energy is everything and everything is energy. And so I took that to say, well, based on that, looking at my own personal life, I realized that there's basically 8 forms of energy that I look at that I have. Again, this is not based on anybody else's data. People can have 10 forms they want, but I've created 8 forms. And those 8 forms are, and I'm gonna quickly go through each of the forms, each form of energy, then I'm gonna ask you questions based in those forms. So the 8 forms of energy are, number 1, your physical energy. Understanding, again, you're born with a lot more physical energy. As you get older, you lose some physical energy. That's nature. You got mental energy is number 2, what you feed in your mind. Your spiritual energy is number 3. 4 is your love energy, building your relationships, how you build relationships with others. Number 5 is your wisdom energy. Number 6 is emotional energy. Number 7 is soul energy, your essence. And then finally, number 8 is generative energy, how you go about applying and behaving and putting action to your life. And so with all that being said, I'm going to ask you questions based on each of these different energies areas, because I think your background is one that I really want our leaders to understand how you're able to navigate. And I think it's really a great learning opportunity for me and everyone else that's listening, particularly the wisdom that you've been able to display over your years as a leader. So the first question, starting off in physical energy, you've maintained a high level output for over 4 decades in high stress environments like law enforcement and HR executive suites. Looking back, what was the biggest physical energy leak that you would say you tried to exhaust your body? And then what was any particular plug or thing you used to increase energy to prevent that from tiring you out while you were on your mission?
Very good question. The physical energy, I guess, really came from, one, my desire to just exert as much energy as I can in my career. And when I started off, I think in the state police, that was a change, because I think the thread that ran through me, I always wanted to know and do different things and learn different things. And once I got into something, I poured everything into that so I can learn as much as I possibly can about that. Starting off really from college, I really, again, and I'll get to the state police, but I started off at college at Virginia Union because I was the first one in my family to go to college, and I paid my way through school. So I had to work to accomplish a goal. I worked at Bethlehem Steel here in Baltimore, Maryland, paid my way to school the first 2 years because I wanted to be that first. It was always something that I guess was instilled in me. I was a dreamer. I always wanted to get out there and do things differently. And so going to college in my family being the first, not finishing those first 2 years, I moved on to Bowie. And then this was during the Vietnam era when I got drafted and was ready to go to Vietnam. I didn't want to go to Vietnam because I figured I wasn't going to come back. If I did, I wasn't going to be in the mindset that I was when I left. So I decided to, at that time, to join the police department. And that was basically an idea to possibly get a deferment where I didn't have to get drafted. And a good friend of mine, my best friend, told me, while I was thinking about Baltimore City, he said, why don't you try the state police? And I said, you know what, that's a good idea. So he put that idea in my mind, and then I got locked in. And I say that probably because I was a math major when I was in college. So I'm somewhat like you, maybe in that idea of math and putting those formulas together. I said, well, okay, I'm going to definitely put all I can into this, into applying for the job, knowing that I found out later on that the entrance exam was possibly discriminatory or that I wouldn't be able to pass it, which I did. I got a very high score. And so I joined the state police in January of 1969, and I stayed there for 5 years. And the energy that I put into that, I really wanted to move on and not just, and I guess it looks at it now from a twofold, not just the physical energy, but also the mental energy. I wanted to achieve and not just be along with the crowd, but basically wanted to excel mentally, excel emotionally. And the mental aspect of that energy really coupled with the physical. Because I always say, if you've got a sound mind, you've got a sound body. And if you've got a sound body, you've got a sound mind. And I always was active athletically. So I basically had both of those running in concert. The strong mind, the strong body. I played sports, played any type of sport around there, ran cross country. None of those things really helped my physical energy. That also gave me the mental energy at the same time. So when I joined the state police, I brought that to the table. And at that time, there was only 9 in front of me, 9 African Americans. I made number 10. And once I got in and facing some racism and all, my mental energy kicked in. And so when you talk about the 7th, the 8 energy systems, energy forces in there, I would say probably connecting the physical and the mental was basically in concert with me, going through all of those first years in the law enforcement arena with the state police, moving over to Prince George's County where I faced that racism, and also when I went to Bowie as chief of police. But the 2 organizations that I really had to use my physical and mental in concert, and I would say that very strongly, they were in concert, that got me through both back in that time, the physical in terms of, and the mental in terms of the racism that was there or the discrimination that I faced, and breaking through those barriers that I, now looking back, was the theme, or shall I say, not even the theme, the thread probably would be the better term. The thread that carried me throughout my entire career. Not letting anyone take my mental capacity away, and not letting anyone take my physical capacity away. So I think if you've got a strong mental and a strong physical, the emotion, the spirituality, and all came along in my life came along later. But I came in there with any organization that I joined with that mental and that physical. That's what I was talking about in combining the two.
Understood. Thank you for sharing. I was thinking about when you were sharing the story that you said you was number 10 as far as Black police officers state troopers in the state of Maryland, correct?
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Yeah.
So did you get an opportunity to meet the very first one? Was he still active when you joined the force?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. The first one was Milt Taylor. I met him, and oddly enough, or ironically, really, those 5 years that I was in the state police, one of those years, he was my supervisor. So I really got a very personal connection with him. And really, we became friends even after I left. He stayed on and retired as a captain in the state police. But he was the first one, and I really respected him. And I would say this, when he joined, he was the first one. And what he went through, definitely I admire, because you always remember that first one that breaks the barrier, and others came after him. So I really got a chance to meet him in person, got to know him from a personal standpoint, ask him what he had to go through, and he shared his story. And it really resonated with me because I went out there. He unfortunately did not have the opportunity to work what we call the patrol division or the work in the barracks of the state police. They brought him on and really kept him in Pikesville, which was headquarters there in Maryland, and really only brought him out really to maybe showcase that they had a Black state trooper, and it was Milt Taylor. But they really kept him behind the scenes, so to speak. And even then, the other 8 that came after him, we were breaking barriers again too. And I had the opportunity, being the number 10, to join the state police. I knew the first 9. So not just the first one, but all the 9, including Milt Taylor, and the 8 or the 9, shall we say, that preceded me. And I was number 10 coming in at 69. So of the 10 that now, only about, I think in my memory, I think 3 of us are only remaining right now of the first 10. Yes.
Well, that's definitely still a very impressive work. And I can't imagine what you all had to go through being that first 10 and dealing with the racism.
The racism, and really, like you say, the racism in there and the climate. You got to think about, as you said, this was back in the 60s. He joined in 1957. So you're looking at it from a standpoint of 57 and to 69 in the early 70s, when the civil rights movement was just coming on. So we were trailblazers, if you will, in that respect, because most people didn't see a African-American in a state police uniform.
Right.
And I will share with you very quickly too, one of the things that I was able to do, I became also the first African-American to join the personnel department as a recruiter for the state police. So I had to go out there and recruit individuals to join the state police. And here's a quick story I didn't share with you before, but when I joined, I had to travel all 23 counties in the state of Maryland.
Wow.
And so, yeah, wow. Wow is right. And in some areas, and this is back in now, when I was in the state police recruiting division, that was back in 1973, 74. And so when I went to visit, and if your listening audience is from Maryland, the state of Maryland, when I got on the Eastern Shore, traveling through Cambridge, Easton, Salisbury, and all, and African Americans would look at me and want to take my picture because they had never seen a Black state trooper at all, because the ones that had preceded me all worked in the Baltimore metropolitan area. So they did not get on the Eastern Shore at all. So when I started traveling on the Eastern Shore, visiting places like Cambridge, as I mentioned, Salisbury, University of Maryland, Eastern Shore, which was Maryland State College at that time, being in full uniform, I was something of a novelty. So the African Americans over there wanted to take my picture. And the whites over there looked at me and going, "What in the world is going on about here? You've got a state troop." And I laughed at that. But I tell you, when I got out to the Western Maryland now, and we're going out to Hagerstown, Cumberland, and McHenry and Garrett County, there were very few blacks out there to begin with. And for me, going out there as a black Maryland State Trooper, oh, I can tell you, Chris, there was some stories I could tell you on that one. They looked at me like, what in the world is going on?
I can imagine.
And I'll share with you a very quick story. I was in Hagerstown, and this was the Hagerstown or the Washington County Fair. And the state police had a booth there, and we were out there recruiting. Well, I got a call from the state police dispatcher in Pikesville asking me, what's my location? And I said, I'm here at the Washington County Fair, and I'm here on a recruiting assignment. Lo and behold, I found out later on that the state police in Hagerstown and in Pikesville had gotten a call that there was an African-American impersonating a Maryland State Trooper. Wow. He had the car and all, and that person that they claimed was impersonating a state trooper was me. So can't make it up. That's what happens out there.
Wow. Wow. I'm sure you got a lot of stories around that, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
And now moving to our next form of energy, mental. And you talked about there was definitely a concert between your physical and your mental. I'm curious to know, what do you do to feed your mind mentally to improve your mental energy to prevent leakage from happening?
To improve that, I basically, read. I'm not a spiritual person in terms of the Bible and whatever, because some people will say that's where you can get that. I'm not there yet, but I do have some passages in there, sure, that I would lean on. And basically one was, I think it's Philippians 3. I've got to look back at my wall, but I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. So that's probably that. And just my overall desire to learn new things, again, reading, following people that you have even on the back of your wall there. Dr. Martin Luther King, his I Have a Dream speech. I attended the March on Washington back in August of 1963. So and following him, I'm looking over there in the back. You've got also Nelson Mandela, definitely one of those people that you can get that energy from and that mental energy from. So I would say also other Black people, African Americans that I admire. I grew up in the Martin Luther King, Malcolm X era, I would say, and definitely was a student also of Malcolm X. And when I was in college, I saw some of the premier people in SNCC, Stokely Carmichael. Remember when John Lewis was still marching with Martin Luther King. Ron Karenga was another one that I followed a great deal. Understood the Black Panther movement with Huey Newton, Bobby Seale, and Kathleen Cleaver. So I would get my mental energy from all of those folks in there, because these were the forerunners or the people in my era that I admired for what they were doing, the strength that they had, the vision that they had, and the energy that they had.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, one of the things that you mentioned when you and I met that we both have in common, one of our favorite books is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. Stephen R. Covey. And my question for you would be, you know, for those who might not be familiar with the 7 habits, I'll list those. Number 1 is to be proactive. Number 2 is to begin within the mind. Number 3 is put first things first. And number 4 is think win-win in every situation. Habit number 5, seek first to understand before being understood. Number 6 is synergize. And number 7 is sharpen the saw, which means continue to grow and improve. So of those 7 habits, I'm just curious, is there any one habit that you would say is your favorite habit of all
Ooh,
those
yeah.
7.
You really put me on the spot with that, because when you and I both shared that's one of my major books that I admire and have read many, many times. And oddly enough, too, when I got into the corporate world, and particularly in my business, that's one of the things that I highly recommend that people should read and understand. But back to your question, I think number 5 would always resonate with me. Seek first to understand, then be understood.
Mm.
And in my career, going into the private sector, that's probably the one that stands out the most. Seek to understand. Seek first to understand the people. So it was something that probably after I picked it up that I reflect back to, that I basically were doing but didn't know it at the time. When I traveled, like I said, in the state police and other organizations, seek to understand the culture, understand the person, and in some cases, my boss or my supervisor, the organization that I'm in. Let me understand you. And I say this very quickly. When I transitioned from the law enforcement into the private sector, I worked for a company in Arlington, Virginia that was doing a government contract to train the Saudi Arabian Navy. And this is way before I got Covey in there. But I told my boss that I was a placement specialist in, because they tapped into my recruiting experience. So they had me as a placement specialist. And I was recruiting people to go to Saudi Arabia. And I told my boss, I can't send people to Saudi Arabia if I haven't been myself.
Mm.
He looked at me, Chris, and said, really? He said, would you like to go? I said, yes. So they put me on a plane. I went to Saudi Arabia, spent some time in Dhahran, spent some time in Jeddah, also had a chance to fly over into Brussels, Belgium, and then London, England. But here's what I said when you go back to number 5. Seek to understand, then be understood. Flying into that and learning the culture of those countries, understanding the Islamic countries, the Muslim countries, understanding what a Shia versus a Shiite. I studied those particular cultures. Then one of the things that I found out too that really hit me like a brick wall, and I never will forget it. I was flying from Dhahran to Cairo, Cairo to Brussels, and Brussels to London. Well, when I was on the plane from Cairo to Brussels, we were flying a Belgian airline. And the flight attendant, Chris, gave the flight instructions in 5 languages.
Wow.
And English was number 5. And I said, wow, just what you said, wow. And here was a side joke in my mind. I said, boy, if he's giving these instructions in 5 languages and English is number 5, I hope the guy next to me understands the first one so I can follow him. But it taught me, Chris, one thing that was a thread. We as Americans are very illiterate to other people's cultures.
Absolutely.
And when that hit me again, that stayed with me. So when you go back to your question again, seek to understand, then to be understood. Let me understand your culture, whether it's here in America, and there's subcultures in here. People in Vermont are a lot different than people in Tennessee. So when you read my bio in a sense of 16 states, I had to understand that these cultures, what's the culture of these 16 states? Because Maine is a lot different from Tennessee. And Ohio is a lot different from Virginia in some cases, the Tidewater area versus Cleveland, Ohio. Yes, it's in America, but we got a little subculture in there, colloquialisms. So you have to understand where you are, understand the people that you're dealing with. And the more we started talking, and I was probably in many of those cases, the first African-American that they had seen in a major position with the company, I had to understand them. We had to find common ground. So I wanted to understand them. So back to the mental, once I got to an area, I wanted to read the local papers. What's the local papers? What's the local the mindset? The newspapers, also the news media, or the what's happening in the area, the suburbs, whatever. So get to understand the person, the people. And once you get to seek to understand who they are, and I give another example very quickly too. I went out to a place called Snohomish, Washington, which is out there in Washington State. So I had to understand how they pronounce it. Well, how Snohomish. Okay. What else do I need to learn? Teach me. So I would go there and meet the people and have them walk me through, teach me the culture here. And once they open up and say, oh, you really want to learn? Yes, I do. So again, long story to your question, of the 7 habits, number 5, seek to understand, then be understood, was the thread that basically carried me throughout my entire career. And even when you mentioned the National Association of African Americans and Human Resources, I got to do the same thing with our African American brothers and sisters. Seek to understand, then be understood.
Absolutely. I concur with you there. You know, all the habits are great habits, but I believe the one that will definitely help you move through life better, easier, and then help you gain wisdom is seeking first to understand, then trying to be understood.
Yeah, and I would add to that too, what you just said. The other ones will go in there that feeds everything else. It feeds the proactiveness. It feeds putting the first things first, because then you know, hey, what to put first, because you understand. Helps you to also synergizes, because you've got a collaboration of people that you're bringing together. And at the least, number 7, once you understand, they help you to sharpen your soul.
Right. Absolutely.
And so, and it also keeps you in that proactive mode. So you got to have that mindset of, let me understand who you are, what you're all about, and listen, not just with your ears, but intently with your ears, your nose, your mind, your whole senses. And once you understand that person and they get it, that you really care about getting to know them, getting to understand them, everything else then I think falls into place.
I concur 100%, sir. Definitely. And as you move along, our next form of energy that we want to ask and frame is the spiritual energy. And let me kind of explain what I mean by that. I don't necessarily mean religion. I separate those two. So it's not about the dogma of how you practice any religious faith, but your spiritual journey is your own individual understanding of what your relationship to the Creator is, no one can argue about, as well as how you go about being a servant leader in your daily practices and actions. So in that space, what do you do to kind of keep, and I've seen this, by the way, I don't know if you want to share that story, but what do you do to kind of increase your energy in your spiritual energy space?
Well, I would say, one, I try to stay around very positive people that have an outlook, a positive outlook. I think, 2, over the years, you understand what your purpose is. You know, not just basically there for the financial income and all, but what your purpose is. And you basically said it when you were talking about it. Servant leadership. There's a book out there called Servant Leadership by Robert Greenleaf. We're all here to do what? To serve. Because at the end, you can accumulate all that you want in terms of financial, but what do you want to leave behind? What legacy do you want to leave behind? And if you're a servant leader, going back to, again, the 7 habits, beginning with an end in mind, what's the end? I came here and I understand, hey, servant leadership. And when I formed this company, my mindset was, and throughout my whole career, not knowing in the beginning how I could shape that, but then later on, understanding what my purpose was. And it was probably a commercial at one time, I can't think of the companies that name it, but I adapted their concept. Whatever I touch, Chris, when I leave, I hope I made it better.
Mm.
So when you go into an environment, and even in my career, whatever I touch and got involved in, I really wanted to make it better. Now that ran up against a lot of people who didn't want it to improve on it or wanted to keep it the status quo. But I felt that I had a vision to say, okay, how can I make this better for everyone? So the idea was, I don't make it, but whatever I touch, I like to leave it better than it was when I came in there, and open up the door as a servant leader, having the people that I've met, meeting with them and sharing with them the vision, and then asking them, what's your vision? So if I met you and we connected, what's your purpose? What can I do to make your life better in your career? And so that's basically been the theme that I've had throughout my entire life and throughout my entire career. Whatever I can do, let's make it better. Continuous learning, continuous opportunities out there, continuous growth, that servant leadership. You're not out here for the dollars, you're out here to serve. What's your purpose? To make things better. And I say this at the same time when I mention to you my marriage in here. It's not the family that you're born with, it's not what you're in with, it's what you create to make it better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think about how I met you, and to me, you were exercising your spiritual energy and servant leadership at that time. I mean, I met you at an event called Campaign for Humanity. And now I just kind of want you to, if you wouldn't mind, briefly talk about some of the work that's going on with that. So I know you're heavily involved, as well as Love is the Answer, the movement that you are building with that, because I thought that was a very interesting way to deal with what I call from wreckage to wisdom, or pain to plan. And so if you could talk a little bit about what that event was about and kind of your involvement and what attracted you to work with that Love is the Answer organization.
Well, Campaign for Humanity basically is a program that basically is starting off with Love is the Answer first. And I really want to say that that's part of it, because we've got several programs operating under what we call Love is the Answer. And I connected with Love is the Answer, and really the gentleman who really started it was AJ Ali, and his film, I think back in 2014, Walking While Black, Love is the Answer. And knew him through his wife. We became very good friends, saw the film. So he asked me to contribute to his book, Walking While Black, Love is the Answer. And for our audience, when we look at love, he's basically coined that as an acronym, meaning LOVE, learn about your community, and at the same time, open up your hearts, volunteer, and empower. So again, learn about your community, open up your hearts, volunteer, and then empower. So what we've done now from that Love is the Answer, we've started a program called Alcona Club, where we're going out there to middle school and high school students, teaching them the concepts of love. And then the Campaign for Humanity, the same thing. We're incorporating those value systems into a program where we're taking those love principles and say, how can we now roll this out to the community on a Campaign for Humanity in there, walking them through what we mean, learn about, and it goes back to what we said earlier with the 7 habits for effective people. Learn about your community. Seek to understand and be understood. Open up your hearts to the community. Share with them. And then volunteer. We talk about servant leadership, opening up and volunteering your time, your talent, and your treasure. And while doing that, you're going to also empower others to do the same. So with those concepts involved, we decided, and I say we, our National Association of African Americans in Human Resources, decided let's form a strategic partnership because we our community. So that's what really engaged me. We went out there, and this is how we connected with you and others. We had about 70 plus people there at that January 20th meeting. And that's the springboard for others to do the same. Those concepts of learn, open, volunteer, and empower to make a difference in the community. Takes in the same category of what we call servant leadership, takes the 7 habits for effective people, takes the physical, the mental, the emotional, wisdom, the love, the soul, generative, and the spirituality. All 8 of those groups that you talked about are incorporated in our love principles at the same time.
And I saw that and I witnessed that firsthand. And that's why I distinguish the difference between spirituality being different than religion. Religion, I've met a lot of people who can quote the Bible, but and quote the Quran or whatever their religious dogma is, but not necessarily live it. You don't look at their lives.
Yeah, and you're right. You're right.
So,
you can talk it, but are you walking it?
Exactly.
And that's the critical thing right now. Talk is cheap. Hey, what are you doing in terms of putting it into action, putting it into meaning? And I will share with you, really, we had an individual there that was homeless, a homeless veteran, that he put us through the test. Okay, what are you going to do? We found out at that senior citizen center that he was a homeless veteran. And I will share with you since then, he now has a place to stay. We've got him on the VA and all, and we've done what we call our wraparound services to that individual. So now he's got a home, a place to stay, got his clothes. We're going to probably get him employment and all. That's what we're talking about. And it was just ironic that you were there along with others. And him, as I said to AJ, the leader, this gentleman walked into our midst and put us to the test. Your talk is great. Now let's see what your action's going to be. And we put our action into place. And I can tell you and our audience, we have wrapped our arms around this gentleman, and he is now on the positive road to coming back, reclaiming his life, reclaiming his personhood, not just his manhood, but his personhood. That he's going to make now a difference in society going forward. So we're pleased and blessed to have him enter our midst and put us through the test, and then coming back out of it in the last 3 weeks to really make a difference.
Yeah, and like I said, I witnessed that firsthand. At least I met the gentleman when he came in, and just to think about how humble you have to be in your mind to say, I'm going to walk into this senior center, and so happen when you walk in there, they're having an event called Campaign for Humanity, where Love is the Answer is the organization that's sponsoring it. For him to walk into that senior center that day and have that event there is only truly a blessing. And then for you all to lift him up, and not only, like I like to say, is instead of just giving him a Band-Aid, meaning just feed him for the day and put him out there in a hotel for a night, and then he's on his own after that. You all have really changed his life, and that to me is very impressive. And I thank you for sharing the stories. I think that those are the kind of stories.
We have definitely changed. Yeah,
absolutely.
And to be quite candid, he has changed ours, because when that person walks into your life, and I tell AJ, that was our test. Talk is cheap. Action speaks louder than words.
Absolutely.
And we got challenged in a positive way. I don't say challenge in a negative way. He walked into our lives, walked into that senior citizen center and challenged us, unbeknownst to us, but we got a challenge. We were put to the test. And I'm happy to say, after 3 weeks of wrapping our arms around him, getting him the resources that he needs to get him back on track. Hey, we can tell you right now, that's going to be part of the second campaign for humanity, because we're filming what we've done, and you'll see the end results coming very, very soon.
I look forward to that. Definitely. I look forward to, supporting you all and everything that I can do. Because again, for me, I believe that the best way to be fully human and to raise your frequency is to be kind and look for ways that you can give kindness and give love, which is the next energy level that I want to talk about. And again, when I say love, let me define that. I'm not talking about the romantic love that we see in the movies and here and with Valentine's Day. I'm not talking about that kind of love. I'm speaking of love as the energy that you do, the relationships that you build, the way that you use love as an action, And again, Stephen R. Covey talks about it in his book. He said when his clients came up to him and said, my wife is not happy and I'm trying to figure out how to best love her. And he said, then love her. He said, well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Well, how do I love her? And he said, by loving her. He says, love is an action. It's a verb. You're using it as a noun, put it to action, put it to use. And that's what you all are doing with the Love is the Answer movement. So I just want to have you talk a little bit more about how you all are and how that's impacting your life. So you gave me an example of what you all did for someone else, but I'm curious to know how being involved with Love is the Answer and also being involved in a relationship for 55 years as well. How would you say those things have helped change you and help shape you as a man?
I would say one, personally, even before I came into the Love is the Answer movement, I tell my wife I always had a dream of the person who I would marry. And never had a clue who that would be, but had a dream of the ideal person. And when I met her at Bowie State University, got to give them a shout out there. But when I met her at Bowie, I somewhat knew that she was the person. And I will say this in defining your question. She taught me how to love. And when I say that, she taught me how to love. Her family also were part of that love. I saw the interaction. She's from a family of 9. And what she shared with her siblings, the interactions over the years, demonstrated to me, I think, and not so much I think, I know now, what love is all about in terms of relationships, particularly with siblings, particularly with family. I saw that in her family. Her mother and father, before my father-in-law passed, they were married over 50 years. And I saw how they interacted. I also saw how my wife and her 8 siblings, there were 9 in the family, how they interacted, the love that they showed each other. And now with 3 of them have passed, the 6 remaining, the love that they still have for each other. So I saw that, Chris, being demonstrated over these years that we've been married, particularly in the beginning. And then I also will say, I had a vision, possibly that was implanted in me, knowing that, as I said to you earlier, having my family divorced on both sides. So I know how that was as a child. I did not want to see that with my son and my daughter. So I wanted to create, along with my wife, an environment, a safe environment for them, a positive environment for them. They never saw anger in our family because I didn't want to let them experience that my wife and I arguing. We never argued like that. So they saw the positive thing. So I was basically wanted to create a safe environment for my children. And we called ourselves the A-team, like the TV show, so to speak. But we wanted to create that type of environment for them. So back to your question, I think I learned a great deal on how to love from a person, father, husband, from my wife and her family, watching them, experiencing their love for each other at every social or family gathering that they had in the past and still continuously to have now. So you've got, I think sometimes when you're looking at that type of love and then you start seeing the servant piece added to it, you've got to have it in that core. To me, I learned from them. And I would say also I had the openness and willingness to learn because the commitment was going to be there. I was not going to be a statistic. So I had to understand, again, back to Covey. Didn't know it at the time, but seek to understand, then be understood. I was seeking to understand the relationships that she had and still have with her family and watching everything that they did in terms of interaction and say, okay, this is something that I want to be a part of.
You know, we're having such a great conversation and we're only halfway through the list and we're going through pretty much an hour. So I was wondering if you'd be willing to come back for a second hour so we can go through the rest of the list. Because I don't want to rush you because your answers are so rich, your background and history. I don't want you to speed up just for the sake of time. So I really would rather, if you're open to it, schedule another time for this finish it, the second part of the list.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. We can do that again. Absolutely looking forward to it.
Excellent. And before we depart today, I want to give you an opportunity to share some of your wisdom that you want to leave with the group. Anything that comes to mind that you want to just give out there so folks can now take this and apply it in their lives.
Well, I said this in the beginning and if it's a family relationship, it's not the family that you're born with, but the family that you create. I would say also find your purpose, find your peace, find your joy. And one of the things I think I was told very early, success is a journey, not a destination. It's a journey that we're on. It's a journey that I've been on. And you learn things on your journey and you remember those things. You're going to meet people that are going to be key people in your journey. You remember who they are and that they made a difference in your life.
Excellent. Excellent. And you want to share any contact information, social media accounts? How can people get in contact with you? They want to learn
Sure. They want to get in contact with me. They can reach me on my website, and it's very, very easy. It's natalston.com, NATALSTON.com. And if you want to reach me I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook. Same thing, Nat Alston, Nathaniel Alston on Facebook, Nathaniel Alston on LinkedIn. Website I just gave you. And if they want to reach me by cell phone, 301-437-6758. And so we can, as you said, strategy plus connections plus systems plus value equals capital. I love what you got there because, hey, connecting with the intent, formula, and all. Again, folks, what we're looking at, and Chris, you highlighted, those 7 habits for effective people and your 8 energy systems in there. This is what we're talking about. Have a purpose in life, have peace in your life, and you'll find joy in your life.
Absolutely. And one last thing I want to leave folks with is this question. I'm going to put you on the spot right here. Actually, I'm going to ask you two final quick questions. Number one, with it being Black History Month, and I know like you and I both, we don't just celebrate Black History in one month only, but since it is quote unquote Black History Month, do you have one person that you always look to as, and I know it's difficult, that's why I'm asking this difficult question. Is there one historical figure that you look at, that could be anyone that you want, that you would say, if you had to give one person or recommend one person's book, biography, life to look at, that you would tell people, look at this individual as an example of a true leader, true human being, who would that be?
That's very hard. That's very hard. Most people would put down there Martin Luther King, or shall we say maybe Malcolm X or whatever. I would say possibly, and you got him right back in there now, the person that I think people need to dive in a little bit deeper is Nelson Mandela.
Okay.
Dive a little bit deeper, because when you read his story and how he came out of prison and what he did in the country of South Africa is truly amazing. Truly amazing.
Absolutely.
So, yes, we've got Martin Luther King and others in here, but I say expand your vision outside of what we had here in the U.S. and look at the story of Nelson Mandela.
Absolutely. I concur with that. And then my last and final question is there one song, I know, again, it's a difficult question, one song in particular that you would say kind of is your favorite song, or that would you say what encompasses your life? If they had to play this song.
I would say, I would say what I shared with you earlier, because it moved me when I reconnected with it. And it's oddly enough from a South African singer, Labisa Free. Something, and it's very, very true. Something inside of me is so strong. Something inside of you so strong. So I would say that's the song. And when you look inside, do a deep dive inside of who you are as a person. Remember, there's something inside of you that is so, so strong. And that's the song that I now will continue to play every day again, like I used to. I rediscovered that, and that's what helps me to move forward.
I'm gonna look that song up. Look forward to listening to it. And again, Nate, I want to thank you for being on the show. I'm sorry, Nat, for being on the show. I have a friend named Nate. That's why I keep going back and forth with that. And
that's okay.
And we'll get another show scheduled soon. And now, thank you again, listening audience, for listening to the King Connection podcast. I hope you got some value out of it. Understand why relationships are important, how you must connect with intent to be successful. So again, thank you again, Nat. Thank you again, listening audience. Until next time, let's all continue to connect with intent. Thank you.
Thank you.